Everybody have a handout, have a copy of the lecture notes, right? The outline. So the course is called Self in Society, and today we really start on, last time we talked about the definition of the situation, for instance, in the taken for granted and things like that. So today we're going to start talking about what do we mean by a self. Usually a kind of unproblematic term, we think, turns out to be incredibly complicated, as you should have suspected from some of our earlier discussions about what it means to be in the world and how am I separable or not from the world around me, and how with the world. We said, how do I gear into the world in Alfred Schutz's terms? That is, I do stuff and then the world responds, but it's also true that I've built myself within certain features of the world. Example would be you're students and I'm a teacher, right? And you have to respond in more or less student-ish ways in order for me to be a teacher. Or a different example I used earlier was, if I'm supposed to be funny, you have to laugh, right? And you are. Or a tougher case, you can't be a nice person unless other people think you're nice, right? If everything you do, all your efforts to be nice, wind up, people get offended, or they feel like you're. How can you be a nice person? It's not like niceness is something you have within you, and then you express it, which is the way we tend to think about it. That doesn't really work. See, if you eliminate other people's responses to your. Right? So all sorts of what we think of as intrinsic things about yourself turn out to actually be kind of abstracted statements of your relationship to that matter. We could go into that. So today we're going to start looking at the notion of the self in a little more detail, because the topic of the course is the self in society. So we'll take the self for a few weeks, and then we'll start talking about society. Well, you understand my problem here? You understand the hesitation? I started to say why they fit, how they fit together. But of course, to say they fit together sort of assumes that they were separate to begin with. Out of thinking. All right? But, okay, so let's say some things about the self. We've already gotten some of this. So number one thing that we talked about earlier with regard to Jean-Paul Sartre, you remember, and his ideas about the self? Stuff all the time that has an effect on what's around me. So you walk in the room, the temperature of the room goes up, is the easiest kind of example. You have an effect on other people all the time, whether you want to or not. They're totally passive, and that passivity will have a big effect on me. I'm just letting you know. If you sit there, yes, I'm not good with that, It makes it hard for me to be who I'm trying to be. I deal with life, and you don't get up in the morning. Very common problem. A lot of college students have this one. I know, I'll just hide in bed all day. Well, they'll notice. All right, at a certain point, your roommate's going to think something's wrong. Trying not to be in the world is a way of being in the world. All right? Okay. So, second thing, and this is where we got in the big discussion about Sartre, is that by acting, all right, now the argument here is that there's kind of nothing else there but what I do. All right? It's not as if there's some secret me that exists in the background and what I'm doing is just kind of a reflection of ways. The argument that we're making here, based on phenomenology, is that I'm just doing stuff and that's who I am. Okay? I'm creating my own essence, to use that term, right? Essence and existence kind of thing. So, that has a lot of implications if you start getting serious about it. In my senior thesis group, I just had them do a time log for a week. So you should do this sometime. Just keep a log of how you spend all your time for 1 week. People are strange. And I may ask you folks to do it, actually, and turn them in. But I won't have you put your name on it. Okay? I don't care who's doing what. That's not the point. But it's really, really interesting. You just keep track of how you spend all your time for a week. First off, you'll be appalled. No, you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. Wow, a lot of, like, hang out, you know, 7 to 2. One I got last week I thought was fascinating. It was getting ready, like, multiple times a day. Something big was going to happen. I mean, you spent a lot of time getting ready. Well, it turns out, you know, that what we think of ourselves, of who we are and what we do, is really quite inaccurate. There are all sorts of interesting reasons for that. One variation of this is I look at myself on these tapes after class. It's not at all the way I remember it, you know? But that's just one variety. Anyway, so you should keep a time log sometime. And what you'll discover is that you might think of yourself implies that you do schoolwork. Turns out you don't, right? I mean, it turns out maybe, it varies a lot. It varies a lot, okay? But it's not at all rare to have a Hamilton student who works, let's say, 1 hour every 2 out of class school. Now, I should also say, there are quite a few who work, say, 4 to 5 hours a day outside. In other words, there are students, the range of work, of schoolwork done in this room, probably, there are people who work ballpark, and no exaggeration. Not that unusual. But anyway, the point is, you can look at your day and you can discover that if you're judged by what you actually do, you are, all right, fundamentally we're all sleepers, right? I got that part, that's fine. We're all sleepers. That's who you are. That's your life. Right? Watching TV. That's great. You know, I'm not knocking it or anything. I do a lot of that. But there's this gap then between what, if you start really getting tough about it, between what people are in the sense of how you actually live. All right? Sartre gives these examples, you know, I'm a great lover, you know, I just haven't met the right person. You know, I could be, you know, I could be a wonderful... Well, Sartre would say, that doesn't actually count. You know, you are, he might say, who you are, what you've actually done. All right. Let's move on here. So, the argument here then is that you make a statement of who you are, but you also make a statement, in effect, of what you think is important. All right? Because important or valuable or good, Sartre would certainly say, doesn't exist like check in on it. It's here. Right? So what you're living, your life, you might say, is a statement of what you think is important. TV. Okay, for me it's remote control and like 18 channels of baseball. And we have this digital baseball package. The woman can watch 3 games a day. I'm not making this up. Happens all the time. And flip back and forth between something like that, which is fine. So we like to think, this is all by way of quick introduction, we like to think, and this is a holdover from Plato, if you want to go all the way back, that there are things that just are important, or eventualist argument. That is, if you look at the here and now of what human beings actually do in their lives, right? No transcendent realm. That argument would be, no, it's not that there are good or valuable things somewhere else. It's here, right? And what you do is a declaration of importance. Okay? It's a statement of value. You're offering your life, so to speak, as a testimony to what's actually important, what should be important in our life. Right. So what you actually do is the best testimony we have to what you really, tricky word, think is important. Because it's not thinking, because you don't have to think about it, right? Living. Right? So it's, again, to use that term I've used before, right? It's a pre-predicative statement of what you find valuable. You know what I mean by this? Pre-predicative? Stated it in a sentence with a subject and a predicate. It's pre-predicative. It's without thinking about it, without formulating it at all. You, me, we, all. Everybody lives a certain way. And the way they live is this depressing thought, in a sense. Start worrying about it too much. Right. Now, the only hesitation of this phrase, actually, is that to call it pre-predicative sounds like someday you're going to lay it all out in black and white, which probably doesn't happen. So, and what I'm going to do is start describing the features of a self that lives that way, where we're necessarily all the time making statements about who we are, what we think is valuable, what's important to be doing, the direction we're headed, stuff like that. Well, by its dealings with the world that we're sort of inextricably locked up with. Okay, let's turn the page. All right, so what do we know about the self? One thing that's kind of interesting is that the self, I mentioned typification last week. The self, we typify ourselves. All right, we sort of describe ourselves in not all. So you know, I don't know where you start. Different people start in different places. But let's say I'm a man. I'm white. I'm an American. I'm a Southerner, sort of. And then we can go on. I'm a college professor. You know, I think of myself in certain ways. But there are adjectives that you pick out to describe yourself. And if I ask you, I said, describe yourself in 5 words in a list, you could all go boom, 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 boom. So, you know, so in that sense, we instantly see ourselves in certain respects as not different from other people in a lot of ways, with one crucial exception. And that is, me we're talking here. I can be close to other people. A few other people I'm actually really close to, let's say. But I would much rather they have gastritis, that intestinal fluid that you get, my family and all that, but you know, more or less, I don't want to get that bug. I'm all kinds of sympathetic when somebody else does, don't get me wrong. But there's this kind of impassable gap between when I'm sick and when somebody else is sick. In general terms, other than that sort of thing. All right. Second is, I take myself for granted most of the time. All right? Most of the time, you're not worried about who you are. I think that's a fair statement. Now, there are big exceptions, obviously. First date, am I cool or am I a dork? For instance, you know, it's kind of up in the air. First week or two. Or when you, I don't know, when you first have a child. There's a child like, I hate this baby. You know, oh shoot, no, I'm not supposed to think that. Right? Or I'm really angry about this. Or this was a terrible experience. Or I'm depressed. Right? And suddenly you realize that who you thought you would become maybe didn't quite work out. Right? Or you, okay, let's figure this one out. Right? What am I going to do? Who am I going to be? And then you get, you know, maybe you get in graduate school or you get a job. Okay, I'm working in the fashion industry, you know. Okay, that's good. I got a job. I'm in life. You know, transitions between schools, or when you get married, or your spouse dies, you know, later on, or you retire or something like that way down the line, when it's kind of up in the air who you are. So, let's say my identity is being a teacher, actually. I wouldn't even say a college professor. You know, but the day is going to come, not too far from now, when I won't be able to do that anymore. Right? Either they throw me out or I'm too, you know, my back. That's going to be tough. I'm just telling you, right? That a huge chunk of who you think of yourself as gets cut off. Right? And then how do you deal with that? That's all up in the air. All right. So that happens. But usually, for the most part, day to day, these things are not an issue, right? You just are. Number 3, we all have probably a recognizable biography of some sort. So you've already described yourself probably in a college essay, I'm guessing. Do they have you do that? When you apply, no? You're supposed to whatever you want. Okay. All right. Maybe you have a web page. Maybe on Facebook. You know, and you have a picture of who you are, right? There's you, and then, hey, you know, you're like fun party type person, or you're, you know, you're good with kittens. Yeah, already of the type of person you are, and then you try to present it on Facebook. See, I'm going to do a web page soon in conjunction with this podcast business for myself. And I woke up at 5 in the morning fantasizing what I would say about myself. You know, it's, okay, so here's what you can do as a little exercise for this class, if you want, you know, just on your own, is write your little biography. 1 page, right? But here, there are 2 sides. You got to have two, the front and the back of the page. So the first page, the front side, is all about mistakes, using what you know about your life so far, right? So you start out doing this, and then you became, you know, 8th grade, president of the class, you know, dynamic leader, blah, 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 blah. And you write all your achievements and things that point to this great success. And you write your little biography, writing how you wind up as a serial murderer. Okay, as a killer. Like when you're 40 years old, it comes out that you just, you know, axed 18 different people on Long Island one summer. And you can kind of point it to that. Okay, like I told you last week, I was kindergarten, I bit John Brock on the leg. Okay? He was annoying me. He was annoying me. I chomped him. You know, somewhere along the line, a long time I've had a fascination with guns and weaponry. Okay, this is true. I made swords when I was a little kid. Right? I had guns. I actually owned. This is true. I actually owned a bazooka type of thing. It wasn't a bazooka. It was a Piat. It was a rocket launcher, anti-tank rocket launcher, from North African camp. I was 10 years old. Okay, and I bought this thing at the same time that I bought a machete. In an army home, this thing. She's like, "What on earth is that?" The only kid in the neighborhood had one of those. Anti-tank gun. You mess with me, right?
Congratulations.
You can see. Yes, they laughed at the time. Right? Okay. Really do give hints of, you know, nefarious activities down the line. All right. People ask who you are. You can slide down a little bit. And mostly, though, you just have these kind of stock responses. I used Brittany Johnson. She graduated. This is it, right? You have a quick response, standard format biography, no sweat. Okay. The point there, though, is just that, normally speaking, you can't list out all the stuff you've ever done. A lot. You typify it a lot. And you come out with what we could say a concept of who you are. A pretty simple picture that has some sort of aura around it or feeling about it or something of that sort. Maybe it's good feeling, maybe it's not. I don't know. Depends on the person. Karl Marx. You know, Sigmund Freud. Oh yeah, these are big, heavy, serious people. We don't know like Bob Marx. You know, Sigmund Freud. Well, you know, his mom. Schnauzel Freud. Yeah, what a guy. We're like, no, it's like Freud. See, and there's this kind of aura to it, an idea, and the same is true for yourself. So you have this notion of who you are, right? Your name, and that name has an emotional weight to it, and it becomes, we'll talk about this later, a kind of sacred object. And when people use that name, you kind of expect them to be serious about it, or respect to it, let's say, or snicker, right? Like I don't know. Oh, there's 2 Wills sitting right here. Oh, there's Will. See, they're like, hey, wait a minute, what was that? See, it's supposed to be like, Will. So even the word itself comes to have all these connotations and needs to be treated seriously. Let's go on. Okay, so everybody has this concept of who they are, which we not just your physical existence at all, right? It's this idea of who you are as an individual. That's maybe a place to start. The self is my/our idea of who I am. Now, you'll notice, though, these selves, as we saw from the alternative biography exercise, are challengeable. They're kind of up for debate. Situational definition, are you a serious person or not? So the first day you come into class and you raise your hand to ask a question, professor can go, yes, or he can go like, you kidding? You? Yeah. Right? And all of a sudden your self feels a little bit challenged. Deserved. And this comes out in all sorts of examples in golfing. But let me give you a bunch of different examples. every so often you can, I told you the recommendation letter story. Yes? Okay. What happened there is that for 50, idea of how that professor saw me changed quite dramatically. And I thought, oh my God, he thinks I'm this total loser. And in the time it took me to ride my bike from his office back to his house, I was a student, you know, that I once had shown such great promise, blah, 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 but really it got kind of sloppy. I knew it. He's right. You know, I had it figured. That was fine. Okay. So you get a glimpse of how other people see you. It's a different story. I told this in another class. Some of you may remember this. It's Valentine's Day. I got a secret Valentine. It was great. It was great. It was, you know, it's like on red paper. It had aluminum foil done on the front without a little heart and stuff. And I get this thing, and big too. I was like, yeah. Right? I'm the man. And it was Valentine's. I'm walking around campus, and every girl I'd ever had a crush on, because I thought it might be her, you see. And then, after about a week, this friend of mine, who was nice enough, you know, she said, "Did you get anything special Valentine's Day?" Total deflation. Not that I didn't appreciate it. It was nice of her to send it. But up until that time, up until that moment, the possibilities were limitless. You see? And it turned out that just wasn't read in before I got the secret Valentine. All right. So, other things happened, like self-discovery of various sorts. So, this is, you know, stories about me, but you translate it in your own life. So I was competitive swimming. I'd never been any kind of athlete at all. I mean, terrible. Terrible. Last kid picked. No kidding. For everything. 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 Harriet Green killed me in volleyball. I mean, it was... Whatever. I didn't have any stake in it, you know, like I read a lot. At any rate, at some point I got into competitive swimming, and I started out. But one of them was, I'd always sort of thought of myself as not very hardworking. Okay, so I never got particularly good grades in school or anything like that. I never did any work. And I got into competitive swimming, and for whatever reason, I just, you know, really kid on my high school team out of 40 guys, and it was kind of nuts. But part of it was that every day I would go in and do that, and I was sort of telling myself that I'm not lazy. You know, it just gave me a sense of that. But it was a discovery of some sort. You know, I never thought of myself as hardworking before. And here, for whatever reason, in this one arena, this thing comes out. And suddenly your self-image kind of changes, right? Your notion of who you are can kind of change. So you have guys in the military. So there's a fellow named William Manchester, who's now dead, but he was a very fine writer. And he fought in World War II. He was a Marine. Got drafted, or enlisted because he knew he'd be drafted. Joins the Marine, goes off to the Pacific, in a big battle. And he's like a platoon leader, I think he was, a lieutenant. And, you know, most of the time in combat, you don't shoot anybody. You're like this. You know. I mean, it's very big finding. World War II, something like 20% of American soldiers actually fired their weapons. I mean, for 20% of those who were in battles actually ever fired their weapon, much less shoot somebody. Okay, usually it's just like, geez, get me out of here. Would pin down his unit, you know, some guy with a rifle a couple hundred yards away shooting. Well, you know, everybody's like, we're getting clobbered. He had to do something about it because he was the boss. He was the leader. And long story short, he crawls around, you know, goes off, comes up behind this sniper in a house, kicks the door open. So Manchester's, you know, got a .45 automatic, which is a big pistol, right? I mean, a serious handgun. Kicks the door open, and the sniper rifle with a scope and on a harness they kind of wear because it locks it in place against your shoulder. And the sniper spins around, sees him, and goes, ah! And gets tangled up in his harness. Right? And it's doing this kind of, boom, blows the guy's head off. And then he's never done anything like this in his life, you understand? Go out and shoot what was at that moment at least. Now, the guy was killing him and his men, you understand? I mean, he was motivated, and I'm not judging the case, and he wasn't. But the idea of blowing somebody's head off was just not in his self-image. And decompensated is what nurses fell apart. It took him about 15, 20 minutes to get himself back together. He had done this thing that just had no relation whatsoever to everything he had thought about who he was up until then. All right? Combat, which is why a lot of them have PTSD. It's not just having bad stuff happen to you, it's discovering that you have the wherewithal to do stuff that maybe you didn't want to think you had it in you. Okay. Okay. You know, some of them work out well. I mean, my swimming examples are, I was like, maybe we'll talk about more of those later. You can have a radical change in who you present yourself as. You know, the mafia guy who winds up in the, as an FBI informant. You've seen Goodfellas, no? How many have seen it? Goodfellas? Not that many. It's actually a very good movie. And at the end, the guy who's a mobster winds up, he testifies against the other guys, and they send him off to some witness protection program, and he's some schlub living in the suburbs in the newspaper. It's like, who am I and what am I doing here? It's this total change of who you are. Okay. Or it could happen where Kay Toombs is a woman who, I think I mentioned before, is a philosopher who's about 30, and all of a sudden, you can't walk. And this has this huge impact on your life and who you can be. All right. So all these things happen. Final sort of example of this would be pro athletes. Ball players in particular have a really wretched time after they retire. For one thing, the system's not, they don't have a good retirement program, which you wouldn't believe, but it's not good. And they get cut off from medical benefits after 3 years, and all the fevers beaten out of them during their career. So in fact, they have huge medical problems. And they all have arthritis of one sort or other, really early on. You know about the head injury stuff nowadays, and steroid use, and I mean, it's just a bad way to be. But there's also the notion that very modest circumstances in life, they don't have a lot of other skills. Turn out they're great at playing football, you're 350 pounds and fast and strong. There's not a big demand for that out there, outside of pro football. Well, I'm 350 pounds and I have a place for you in banking. Right? It's not good. So you wind up 30 years old and you've spent your plus. Of course, for the last 15 years, you've been this incredible hero. Center man, and you run out on the field and 100,000 people go nuts cheering for you. And then one day, somebody hits your knee funny, crunch, and you're SOL, right? Wind up working for some local car dealer, right? Or if you're lucky, you make, you sell coffee machines or something. Not good. Yeah, 50% divorce rate within 3 years after they finish. Yeah, huge rate of divorce. Let's go on. So this is all the self, and you have your concept of who you are, and things can change it, right? It can be challenged, or you can have huge cutoffs at various points in your life where suddenly you can't be that. All right, first, let's be basic here. What is this? Where does it come from? First thing is that you have a body. That is, you physically exist. Now, that's really, we wouldn't be talking about you. Right? If you hadn't shown up physically in the world at some point, game's all over, right? And so, and it's true of everybody. Karl Marx, Charlotte Bronte, I don't know whoever you pick, sorts of issues. And that affected the way they did things and so on. And we usually don't think of it because they're kind of people of ideas. But the body is your point of entry into the world. Now, the only reason I hesitate in saying that is that, again, into it, but roughly speaking, there's a world, I got that. You join it, you physically enter the world. All right? Now, a couple of things we can say about having a body and the fact of embodiedness. Number one, everybody, you can pretend you don't care about it, but that's not true. Okay? As soon as you get sick, you realize that. You care about it a lot. It's just that right now things are going really well. For most of us, most of the time. Thank God. Okay, I'm glad. All sorts of things. You think you think the physical presence of a person, you might be able to set that aside, or, well, we shouldn't care, for instance, what somebody looks like, or how they talk, or anything. I'm fine with that, right? That's great. I should like just focus on whether they're good looking or not, but it's really hard to avoid. Give you an example here. It's kind of a definition of the situation kind of thing. So he's going to miss a good story. It's okay. You pick it up on the podcast. College. And I told you I swam competitively in high school. And that was a big part of self-image, right? So I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of athletic guy. Sort of. At least the college I went to, I thought I would be, because they didn't have any sports at all. So, big, beautiful swimming pool. Late afternoon. First week of college. Nobody around at the pool. It's like 5 or 6 o'clock at the evening. Like I say, the palm trees at Sarasota, Florida, beautiful place. I go out and I'm swimming along. I'm just cool beyond belief. And there's nobody else at the pool. There's me and the lifeguard. But I'm just, I'm having a great time. And I'm lying there. I had my arms kind of up, and there was not a gutter exactly, but a kind of low. This is great. This is great. Nobody. In the gate opens to the swimming pool, right? And in walks, I'll call her Liv, since she was Swedish. Okay? I had met her at the high school. Okay? And in walks Liv, who I'd been introduced to the day before. She was a sophomore, ergo, incredibly sophisticated. In addition to which, she was beautiful and what you might call willowy. You know, willowy? Willowy. And elegant. I mean, she was really elegant. No doubt about it. She walks in, I'm like, I'm lying in the pool, and here she comes. And she walks over to the table next to the pool. And she's wearing a sundress, this yellow sundress. And she does one of these things. You know how you cross the hand? And you go like this. Okay, great. Underneath, she is wearing... She walks over to the side of the pool, dives in. This is a true story. Dives in, swim, 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 swim. Comes up in front of me with one of these. All I'm thinking is, be cool. You know, like, hey, no big deal. You know, this happened all the time at my Christian. Right? And I'm thinking, so, well, that was it. You understand? And she was just like, oh, I hope you're having a nice time. I'm like, she swims off or whatever. It's just sort of different. And I needed to adapt to that. That was kind of the message I took away. Like, okay, no big deal, you know, we're all human beings, it's natural, you know, there's nothing, you know, necessarily. The end of the tale. At any rate, so what was the point of that? So there I was trying to sort of pretend like, you know, this was not, there, you know, we're just human beings and so on, right? But there's this issue there. Okay, so don't look at the body, the voice is there. All right, we're talking to people. You ever notice this? Like if somebody gets sick, it's kind of different talking with them, you know, like if they have a cold or they have laryngitis. Every so often, we'll be sure to do this. When I get a cold, it tends to go down and have laryngitis for a day or two. I sound like Johnny Cash. That's the way I think of it. Oh there, hello there. And I walk around the house like, oh there, I'm Johnny Cash. I kind of enjoy this voice thing because, and it changes, or you look different, or whatever. Okay, all right, let's go on. So your body is, now what, the point isn't getting too lost here in these little sidebars, but it's that world, and there's no escaping that. Right? And that affects the way you deal with other people. If you're taller than they are, or shorter, or if you for a while last year, I had a motor here. And I started noticing people would notice it, you know, and they're talking to me, and they're like, and you can see their eyes kind of drifting off. And at a certain point, little kids, like my granddaughter, started saying things like, "You have a thing." And I'm like, okay, I need to get this thing all the time, in a sense. Right? Good or bad stuff, people notice who you are physically. You kind of can't escape it. Another thing is that it's your only means of expression, right? So not just the way you talk, but the way you move. So one's posture. Stand up straight, does that change the way students see me? I think maybe I mentioned already, if I look down when I'm thinking, when I pause, did we talk about this? Okay, here we are in class. If I think about something and I start looking down a lot, it doesn't work well. It's better when I'm thinking about something in class to look up and do like this while I'm trying to figure out the next thing to say. It's more open, it looks thoughtful or kind of uplifting rather than suspicious. People handle those things differently. You know, you meet people sometimes whose expression doesn't match their thoughts. You know, like people, I mean, easy example is people who smile when they're miserable. And you misread them quite easily. Girl, there's this marvelous essay, if you're interested in this, by a philosopher named Iris Marion Young called Throwing Like a Girl, that comes out of Merleau-Ponty, actually. But she describes, you know what I'm talking about? You know the expression? You know what it means? Yeah.
It's like throwing a ball in kind of like a disjointed way, like the wrist and the shoulder aren't coordinated with the torso.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's a very good way to put it. Now, the essay was written in the 70s, before Tyler. Not many girls anymore throw like a girl. In the old, you know, it's this, right? And what you described is sort of what she goes into in much greater detail, is coordinated and how it looks and so on. She gives this beautiful description of what it is, or was then at least, to be a young female in our society, and how the body was sort of organized in a certain way to project certain things about who you are and so on. Anyway, so there's throwing like a girl. Body's our only means of getting around, only means of transportation. Right? You hurt your ankle and you discover that real fast, or a knee or a hip or something of that sort. Already talked about that. Only way to make love to somebody is with your body. Huh? I mean, you can send emails and stuff, right? I'm good with that, but it's not the same. It's not the same, right? And so if your body has various problems, you know, like, or I can't lean this, oh man, you know. Next thing you know, like, okay, just, you know, I'll see you in a week. Or whatnot, right? You can't do it, right? Okay. And this is who I am, like it or not. So what I have there is, sorry, that's Dan Shambles for you. No babies. Can't happen, no matter how much I would like the idea. Though I don't. And I'll never dunk unless I get one of those little cheaty 8-foot things. You know, like the dreams about dunking a basketball. Fairly often. I'm good too. I mean, in the dreams, I just float. It's a fantasy. Okay, so you know your body. Another thing, you know your body intimately, but it's pre-predicatively. You're not aware of it all the time. For instance, could you? I mean, you know how to tie your shoelaces, right? Most of you, I assume. But it would be exceptionally different, and probably you can't even replicate the motion without shoes being on that have laces. Follow? For you to engage with the world, with your yeah, right, everybody's like, see, you kind of need the outside world. You need that object. No, I undid them. Wrapped them around differently. You kind of need that particular way. By the same token, you probably, just sitting here, now don't move, right? Can't tell me which finger you used to type the letter E. You gotta kind of work on it, right? Is it left hand the fourth finger? Yeah. Okay, all right. But see, you're geared into the world.
Heck, it's a
You're
game
geared
changer.
into the world. So that even your skills at dealing with the world depend on the world. You know your body, but it's not self-conscious. I took a shower this morning. Now, don't even think that. All right. So at least we can say the self is this concept, but it's a concept of particular sort, very particular sort, right? It's yours. It's very specific. Very specific. Okay. All right. Occasionally you see these out-of-body experiences. That's not really what I'm thinking about right now. But one day, when I was about your age, it was my 3rd year. I can remember the window. I was lying on my bed, just like, and I had my hand, I lifted my arm like this. I mean, that's kind of a beautiful thing, if you think about it. Your hand, I mean, I guess this is why Rembrandt people do pictures of it, you know. That's cool. But I started lifting my hand, just try to do it with the muscle isolated here. So everything else is loose. And you know what happens? Isn't that cool? It curls up, it folds up together in this kind of beautiful way. Right? You know, and it really, I was just fascinated, like, look at that. And this finger always goes under this one, and this one's over this one, and so on. And you can discover that your body can do these amazing things now and then. That you've not been maybe aware of that, by the way. It's another one of these. I like to think of this course as filled with these aperçus, if you know the word. Just little things that I think they fit together eventually. Is that, I mean, you finished the whole now sometimes, of course, it doesn't work that elegantly. I mean, this is why, by the way, people my age like watching people your age in sports. Because you can do things like dunk a basketball or you know, gymnastics or some of these things, because you're right at an age where if you've trained properly and stuff, you can do wonderful things with your body and it all works, right? Well, that's not the way life continues, just so you know. So live it up right now. I'm all in favor of that. Breaking wind or, right? You make a mess, things start malfunctioning, and it starts breaking down, and then you become aware of that. And Irving Goffman, again, has a nice essay. I mean, a handkerchief is a machine for managing body failures, right? Or a fan in the old days. And you get embarrassed, you start blushing and you cover your face with a fan, which is sort of pretending to hide blush, but not really. Hiding body failures of all sorts. That's sort of why it exists, to cover up, you know, things that might be embarrassing. Pain is a problem. Now, when you start getting to pain, there are really good things written about pain. And we're going to read, have you ever read this? Anybody ever read parts of it yet? This is great. We're going to read a bunch of his essays. Well, when you get to disease and pain, you run into a really interesting problem about bodies, which is, do I have a body? I am a body. That is, I can deliberately use it in certain ways as if it were an object. But it's an object I can't separate myself from, which is sort of weird. So then I get a disease, phenomenologically, I would argue. Some diseases you have, and some diseases you are. You follow me? That is, there comes to be a point where, like an infection, and it's kind of messing with me. But we ought to be able to kill it off with antibiotics, or maybe I have surgery and cut it out, and then it's no longer there. But there's some physical maladies that just, this is especially true for mental illnesses, of course. So a lot of people who suffer manic depression, when offered drugs that will control that, they find, okay, who literally could die from manic depressive disease, they frequently find that they don't really like taking the drugs because it destroys who they are. All right, that one's identity and experience. that you don't want to get rid of it, even when you know it could kill you in the form of suicide. There's real, if you're interested in this case of where the disease is so much a part of how you live, and for good and bad. I mean, there are certain elements of it that are incredibly exciting and fun, manic depressive to me, but it's so much part of who you are that you don't want to get rid of it, is, in some sense, who I am. All right, so let's see if we can get somewhere. So, I'm stuck in the world. Let me just... The phrase... No, actually. Heidegger was a German philosopher, and wrote a book in 1927 called Being in Time. I've referred to that before. Does that sound familiar? No. Heidegger, and a lot, because their work was about 15 years later. All right? And Heidegger said the key thing to understand about human beings, or the being of humans, is probably a better way to put it, is that my being can't be separated from the world that I live in. Hence, it's all one word, kind of hyphenated. We are being in the world. Okay. So the body and all that is kind of exemplar of that situation. I'm physically here, can't escape this particular body. The body is something I am as much as have, right? To say I have it is kind of misleading. The central part of the starting point of the self, that means the self has a couple of interesting features. Number one, I guess, to call it that. It means that I'm present. So it means present in the sense of, like, in elementary school they call your name. You know, and you go, present. Did people say that?
Yeah.
Present? Yeah, okay. Present. I'm on the scene. I'm here. I'm responsible. That's where the word responsible comes from. I can respond to things. I can do stuff. And that can be a bad thing, as we'll discover next week. It can be a really bad thing that people want. Right? You're an affront to everyone else. Right? You're present in time. So because I'm physically here, I can do stuff. And history is going on all the time around me. Right? And it's kind of moving past me like the wind shapes, and that affects what's going past. Does that make sense? Think about time kind of rushing past you, and you're actually here. And stuff happens because of the way you stand and the way you move. You affect, and that can be a real drag sometimes. A real drag. And it also means on the other side that you're not only doing stuff, but you're exposed and you're vulnerable, and things can happen to you. All kinds of bad things can happen to you because you're in an unpleasant situation to be in sometimes. Okay. What do we have? Anything on the next page? Is that at the end? That's fine. Okay. Let's pause here. See if you got any questions. Preview. So here's what's going to come up. Because you have a physical body and a self that's connected with that, that's this kind of idea, you are anything that anyone can do, and almost. Not fly over mountains, we talked about that. You know, lots of stuff. But at the same time, all sorts of bad things can happen to you, and you can screw up in phenomenal ways. Dealing with that. And a lot of those are really, really relevant to how we fit into society generally. Or to put it differently, a lot of what social life is about is managing the responsibility. Right? So the next thing we'll get to coming up pretty soon is going to be Sartre's understanding of how we pretend that we're not really responsible for stuff all the time. That's fascinating subject. But for next time, you read the Irving Goffman thing on face work, and we'll talk about that.